What does it take to, suddenly dominate an entire country's auto market, scale operations across 3 continents, and this is the crazy part, integrate sci-fi level robotics onto your factory floor?
Oh, and all while literally burning billions of dollars in the process.
Right? Exactly. Billions. So if you were looking for a masterclass in walking this high wire of financial risk while sprinting toward hypergrowth, you have definitely come to the right place. Today, we are looking at a document that is fundamentally a blueprint for how to build a global mobility powerhouse, basically from the ground up.
Yeah, it is an incredibly revealing source. We are looking at the Q4 2025 earnings report from VinFast. This is officially dated March 16th, 2026. And, calling this a dry financial document just completely misses the point.
It really does.
Right. It is a roadmap of extreme ambition. It shows us the brutal, highly capital-intensive reality of trying to forge a brand-new automotive empire in the 21st century.
So the mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly how this EV manufacturer went from being, well, a regional player to an absolute dominant force.
Yeah.
We want to dissect the severe financial reality of scaling that fast. And we'll explore how their heavy bet on artificial intelligence and humanoid robotics might be their ultimate wildcard.
Definitely.
Okay, let's unpack this. I think we should start with the sheer volume of cars they're pushing out, because the physical logistics here are just staggering.
Staggering is the right word. The 2025 delivery numbers genuinely disrupt the traditional timeline of heavy manufacturing. I mean, for the full year in 2025, they delivered 196,919 electric vehicles.
Wow.
Yeah, that is complete doubling of their 2024 number.
Double in one single year. Let's just pause and think about what that physically requires. Because in a software company, doubling your users just means, spinning up more cloud servers.
Right, just code.
That's exactly. But in automotive manufacturing, doubling your output means sourcing twice as much raw steel, securing twice as many lithium-ion batteries. You have to double the number of logistics, trucks, cargo ships, the whole thing. It is an operational tightrope.
It's massive. And it's not just that they're making a lot of cars, it's where those cars are actually going.
Yeah.
By the end of 2025, they secured an estimated 36% market share in passenger vehicles in Vietnam. That is up from 22% the year before.
Wait, 36%.
Yeah. They have been the #1 original equipment manufacturer, or OEM, nationwide for 16 consecutive months.
And just to clarify that term for the listener, being the top OEM doesn't mean they're just like a popular dealership selling other people's cars.
Right.
It means they're the actual architect and builder of the machines. So more than 1 in 3 new passenger cars bought in the country is a vehicle they designed and stamped out of their own factories.
Exactly. And to support that, their Haiphong plant hit a really striking milestone. They rolled out their 200,000th vehicle of the year there. They produced nearly 26,000 EVs in December alone.
In 1 month.
In 1 month, yeah. Looking at their total historical sales since inception, we are talking over 420,000 cars and more than 709,000 e-scooters.
See, I have to push back on this a little bit because my brain is really struggling with the physics of this scale.
Fair enough.
In the traditional auto industry, taking a 36% market share of a country usually takes decades, right? Decades of brand building, incremental factory expansions. Doing it in a couple of years feels completely unprecedented. It's like watching a local indie band suddenly sell out stadiums worldwide in a single summer. How do you physically scale up factory labor and parts procurement that fast without the wheels literally falling off the operation?
What's fascinating here is that this hometown dominance isn't just about local pride, It functions as a highly calculated, high-volume testing ground.
Okay, a testing ground.
Yeah. When you are building a new automotive ecosystem, your biggest enemy is the per-unit cost. The only way to optimize unit costs, like to negotiate better prices for battery cells or microchips, is to buy those components by the millions. Volume is leverage.
I see.
So by essentially revolutionizing Vietnam's automotive sector and becoming the nation's benchmark for EV adoption, they have created this massive captive beta testing ground.
So they are essentially using their home country as an engine to subsidize their global ambitions.
Yes.
They push maximum volume locally to force their manufacturing costs down. That way they can iron out the inevitable kinks in their supply chain before they go toe-to-toe with the legacy automakers in Europe or North America.
That is the core of it. You use a high-demand local market to achieve economies of scale, but moving hundreds of thousands of units is only half the battle.
Right.
The real existential test for any automaker is the profit margin. You can sell 1 million cars, but if you are losing your shirt on every single one of them just to get them out the door, the company eventually folds.
And that reality, the brutal cost of building this ecosystem,
Mhm.
really forces us to look straight into their Q4 financial numbers. Because when you open this section of the report, the tension between this explosive revenue growth and their severe net losses is just palpable.
It really is.
Let's look at the top line first. Q4 2025 total revenue was $1.569 billion. I mean, that is up 118% quarter over quarter and up 139% year over year. For the full year of 2025, revenue hit $3.6 billion.
So the top line is expanding aggressively. Consumers are clearly handing over their money.
But then you look at the margins, and the scale of the cash burn comes right into focus. They're bringing in $1.5 billion at the door in Q4, but they reported a gross margin of negative 39.9% and a Q4 net loss of $1.4 billion. For the full year, the net loss was $3.87 billion.
That's a massive number.
It is. A negative 39.9% margin means for every dollar they make selling a car, it's costing them $1.40 to build it. It feels like they're throwing a massive, incredibly expensive party, bringing in $1.5 billion at the door in Q4, but still losing money on the food and drinks.
That's a good way to put it.
Is this just the classic Silicon Valley burn cash to grab land's playbook applied to a multi-billion-dollar heavy industry?
Well, I like to think of it like building a hydroelectric dam. It is a heavy, heavy upfront capital expenditure. You are pouring billions of dollars into concrete and labor for years before a single drop of water generates a single watt of electricity.
Okay, yeah.
But we have to look at the trajectory of those margins, not just the absolute number, because that negative 39.9% gross margin in Q4 25, that is actually a dramatic improvement from the negative 79.1% gross margin they had in Q4 of 2024.
Oh, wow. So they cut it in half, basically.
Exactly. And their net loss margin improved by 96% year over year.
So the bleeding is slowing down significantly.
It is. And the earnings report highlights the exact mechanisms they are using to slow that bleed. Their SG&A, which stands for Selling, General, and Administrative Expenses, dropped to 25% of revenue in Q4. That's down from 40% a year prior.
That's a huge drop.
It's not an accident. It is a deliberate strategic move driven by their transition to a dealership model.
Right. Let's break that down for the listener.
Right.
Because originally, many new EV companies try to use a direct-to-consumer model.
Like Tesla did.
Right. They own every single retail showroom, they pay the lease on the real estate, and they pay the salaries of every single salesperson. It gives them total control, but the overhead is just crippling.
Completely crippling.
So by transitioning to a dealership model, they are offloading all of that real estate and staffing cost to independent third-party franchisees. They take a slightly smaller cut of the final sales, sure, but they shed an enormous amount of financial risk.
You've nailed the mechanism there. And on the factory side, their research and development costs hit a record efficiency at just 7% of revenue.
Wow.
Yeah. And this brings us back to the concept of fixed overhead. A massive factory costs roughly the same to heat, light, and staff, whether you build 10,000 cars or 20,000 cars.
Right. The rent's is same either way.
Exactly. So as they push out 26,000 EVs in a single month like they did in December, that fixed cost is divided among a much larger number of vehicles. The more you build, the cheaper each individual car becomes.
Makes sense.
Plus, it's really vital to note they are not running out of runway. The report shows their liquidity remains strong at $3.1 billion. That consists of cash, equivalents, and remaining funding commitments from their parent company, Vingroup, and their founder.
Okay, so they have the war chest to survive the burn. But, this brings up a logistical wall. You can only absorb so much overhead in one country. Vietnam has a population limit, and a 36% market share means they're eventually going to hit a ceiling.
Very soon, yeah.
Right. To actually flip those negative margins into the green, they physically have to find new borders. They need more buyers, which forces them into this incredibly risky global expansion strategy laid out in their 2026 ambitions.
And 2025 was really the year they began laying the groundwork for that expansion. In Q4, international deliveries accounted for 18% of their total volume.
Okay, so almost a fifth.
Yeah. And they ended the year as the #2 battery electric vehicle brand in the Philippines. They were #3 in Indonesia and #4 in India. They aren't just shipping a few luxury models abroad, they are establishing real footholds in massive emerging markets.
And they are building the physical infrastructure to support it, right? The report details inaugurated plants in Hatin, a new facility in India with a 50,000 vehicle capacity in Phase 1, and another in Indonesia.
Yep.
Plus, construction on their North Carolina plant in the U.S. is set to resume in 2026. Looking ahead, they are projecting to deliver at least 300,000 EVs in 2026, alongside a 2.5 times growth in e-scooters.
And to hit that 300,000 target across all those different geographies, they are rapidly expanding the product lineup. We are looking at the rollout of the VF6 and VF7, which are these new generation mid-sized SUVs.
Okay.
But they are also tapping into entirely new segments with something called the Limo Green. It's an MPV designed specifically for B2B and corporate fleet customers. And then there's the VF MPV7, which is tailored for individual families.
So what does this all mean? I have to be honest, looking at this strategy, my operational alarm bells are ringing a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are targeting 300,000 cars next year. They are opening factories across 3 different continents. And they are launching 4 new models simultaneously, including this limo green thing for corporate fleets. But wait doesn't come constantly adding new vehicle types and opening disparate factories usually increase chaos and component costs instead of lowering them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the report actually details the engineering strategy they're using to counter that exact risk.
Oh, yeah.
They aren't just throwing random, disconnected car designs onto the line. These 4 new models are built on a completely new platform and a next-generation electrical architecture. And it's designed specifically to reduce complexity. The goal is to lower the bill of materials, which is often called the BOM cost.
Ah, right. I think the skateboard analogy works perfectly here. For the listener, imagine a giant flat skateboard that contains the battery, the electric motors, and the wheels. That is the unified underlying platform. So by sharing that identical skateboard across different vehicle models, you dramatically reduce the number of unique components you need to buy and build. The mid-sized SUV and the corporate fleet MPV might look completely different on the outside, different seats, different doors, but underneath, they are the exact same machine using the exact same parts.
Which means instead of buying 100,000 electric motors for an SUV and a different 100,000 for a van, you buy 200,000 of the exact same motor.
Driving your supplier costs down even further.
Exactly. And targeting the B2B market with the Limo Green is a brilliant way to de-risk this global expansion.
How so?
Well, selling to individual consumers is really unpredictable. But if a corporate fleet or a taxi company orders 10,000 Limo Greens, that guarantees a baseline production run. It gives the factory the steady, predictable volume it needs to operate efficiently.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Pushing this unified platform volume through their new plants in India and Indonesia and selling them via those expanding dealership networks is how they plan to actually justify the scale of their global supply chain.
So they have standardized the underlying engineering. But even with a unified platform, building these vehicles across 3 continents at a volume of 300,000, traditional human assembly lines buckle under that kind of logistical nightmare. You can't just throw more human workers at a supply chain that complex and expect it to run smoothly.
No, you really can't.
Which brings us to what is undoubtedly the most futuristic part of this entire earnings report: the technology they are deploying to actually build the cars.
The shift in their manufacturing approach is profound here. They are not just relying on human labor augmented by traditional bolted-down robotic welding arms. The report details a deep integration of smart manufacturing supported by a division called VinRobotics.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the document explicitly states they are implementing industrial humanoids for material handling and internal logistics.
Yeah.
And they're using robot arm visual AI to detect defects and process deviations to reduce rework, and something called physical AI for adaptive automation. I read this and initially thought, it sounded like a flashy gimmick for investors. Are they building Skynet to build their SUVs?
It does sound like a sci-fi movie.
Right. Do literal humanoid robots roaming the factory actually solve real-world assembly line problems better than, say, a standard conveyor belt?
This raises an important question about the limitations of legacy automotive factories. It's really easy to dismiss humanoids as a sci-fi trope, but look at the specific logistical hurdles they overcome. On a factory floor producing 300,000 cars, moving the right component to the right station at the exact right second is incredibly complex.
Sure.
Conveyor belts are rigid. Once you bolt them to the floor, reconfiguring the factory for a new car model takes months and millions of dollars. Humanoids, however, navigate the factory exactly like a human worker would. They automate internal material handling without requiring you to completely redesign the physical factory architecture.
Oh, wow. That makes total sense.
If you need to change where the steering wheels are delivered, you just update the humanoid software path
Yeah.
rather than tearing up the concrete floor to move a conveyor belt.
Yes.
It makes the entire factory modular and adaptable.
Precisely. And the physical AI they mention is equally critical. Traditional robotic arms are rigidly programmed. They do the exact same XYZ coordinate movement every single time.
Right.
So if a car chassis is even a millimeter out of alignment on the belt, a traditional robot will just smash the part into the wrong spot. It causes a defect or it stops the entire line. Physical AI utilizes cameras and learning-based motion control. It allows the robot to literally see and adapt to real-world variability.
That's wild.
Yeah, if the chassis is slightly off, the robot adjusts its trajectory automatically.
And combine that with the visual AI they are using to inspect components, and you are catching errors before the car ever leaves the station.
Okay.
Which ties right back into those rough gross margins we spent so much time on earlier.
If you don't have to pull a finished car off the line at the very end and pay a human mechanic to manually fix a defective door hinge, your unit cost drops immediately. They refer to this in manufacturing as improving your first-pass yield, getting the car built perfectly the very first time.
That is the ultimate goal. And this vertical integration of technology doesn't stop at the factory doors. It extends deep into the vehicles themselves. The report outlines how they are building software-defined vehicles. These feature domain and zonal architectures, complete with over-the-air or OTA update capabilities.
For anyone unfamiliar with zonal architecture, think about how cars used to be built. Traditional cars have dozens of separate little computers, one for the windows, one for the brakes, one for the radio.
Right.
Connecting all those separate brains requires miles and miles of heavy, complicated copper wiring. It's a mess. Zonal architecture replaces that spaghetti with a few centralized supercomputers that control zones of the car. It drastically reduces the physical weight of the wiring harness and lowers the BMR cost we talked about earlier.
It simplifies the hardware while vastly expanding the software capabilities. Because they control those central computers, they can push over-the-air updates to improve the car's performance long after it has been sold. It's much like updating an app on your phone.
Right.
And they are also managing a global network of over 150,000 charging points. They even demonstrated a self-driving robo-car and laid out a clear autonomy roadmap moving from level 2+, which is, advanced driver assistance where you still have to pay attention, towards level 4 self-driving.
Level 4, so where the car can handle almost all driving tasks without human intervention under certain conditions.
Exactly.
So they're essentially trying to own the entire tech stack from the ground up. The document mentions they have their own in-house Advanced Driver Assistance Systems Research Institute, their own proprietary cybersecurity services, and they're building a unified super app platform to manage the customer experience. They aren't just buying off-the-shelf parts from suppliers, they are inventing the underlying infrastructure.
By owning the core technology, from the artificial intelligence guiding the humanoid robots building the cars, to the cybersecurity, to the super app platform, they control their own operational destiny.
Yeah.
If an IoT sensor monitors the factory equipment and predicts a machine failure before it happens, they don't have to wait for a third-party vendor to fix a software bug. They handle it in-house. It is a highly capital-efficient approach in the long run, even if the upfront research and development costs are responsible for those multi-billion-dollar net losses today.
So bringing this all full circle, we're looking at a company that is operating at a genuinely breakneck pace. In 2025, they doubled their deliveries to almost 200,000 vehicles. They captured 36% of their domestic market and proved they could scale physical manufacturing at an unprecedented speed. They basically used their home turf as a laboratory to refine their operations.
But they are executing this while navigating a severe financial reality. The revenue is exploding, but the net losses are still in the billions. Even though their transition to a dealership model and economies of scale are causing those gross margins to show significant, rapid improvement.
And their answer to that financial tension isn't to hunker down and play it safe, it's to hit the gas. They are aggressively pushing a global factory footprint into India, Indonesia, and the US, aiming for 300,000 vehicles in 2026. They are tackling the chaos of that expansion by standardizing their underlying vehicle platforms to lower costs.
Yeah.
And fueling all of this is an absolute all-in bet on vertical technology integration, from humanoids on the factory floor to level 4 autonomous software in the dashboard. It is a high-stakes race between their available cash runway and their technological efficiency.
It really is the ultimate test of whether software and advanced robotics can conquer the traditional economics of heavy industry.
Which leaves you with something pretty wild to think about. If a car company is vertically integrating its own learning-based artificial intelligence, managing a global grid of over 150,000 charging points, developing its own proprietary cybersecurity, building software super apps, and deploying literal humanoids to run its adaptable factories,
At what point does it stop being a traditional automaker?
that's the real question.
Does it actually become a global data and robotics empire that just happens to stamp out SUVs as a byproduct? And if that level of technological control is the new blueprint for survival, what does that mean for the future of mobility? Something to mull over the next time you see one of these EVs silently roll past you? Keep questioning the information around you, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive.